Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are tuning in from today. It is Friday, so that means just one thing. It is time for our Onwards and Upwards show, where you learn everything you need to know about living and working in the United States as an international healthcare provider. I am Deirdre O'Regan. I am your host for today. I am the Senior Director of Recruitment at AMN International. And if you do not already know, we are the only organization who offers both direct and staffing opportunities. So let me say that again, the only organization that offers both direct and staffing opportunities. So if you have not already, please make sure that you get your application in today at amnhealthcare.com/international. You will see that handle come up throughout our show today. So if you have not already, this is your advice for today. Get your place in line. Make that decision today. It will be the best decision that you make for you and your family, and our expert team of recruiters is on hand to help you. So we have got a packed agenda today, and very, very excited to have amazing guest speakers on with us, experts in their field that are going to help answer any questions that you may have. So if you have not already, I'd love to see where you all are tuning in from. So please make sure that you are popping that into the chat for us. Hello, Ross from Zimbabwe, Ivy from Ghana, Solomon from Egypt. So we have got representation from all over the globe, and we will continue to check in throughout the show where you all are calling in from. So what do we have coming up today? So we're going to be talking about the PTE score changes. So we are joined today, and I will bring him on shortly, Mukul Bakshi, who is going to talk to us about why those changes are taking place. And I'm so really, really excited to speak with Mukul in a little bit here. And it also, every month we have our immigration Q&A. So we will be speaking with our expert attorneys, Chris and Mike, a little bit later in the show. We just got the recent visa bulletin this week, so we will be taking your questions there as well. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Mukul, who is going to talk to us. Hi, good morning, Mukul. How are you?
Good morning, Deirdre. Good to be here. Thank you.
Good. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us. We have got clinicians from all over the globe tuning in to hear all about the PTE changes and how it affects them, if at all. I'm so excited to get your expertise on that matter. But before we go into all of the questions that we have received, and of course, we're also going to take some from the chat, let me give you an opportunity to introduce yourself.
Great. Thank you so much, Deirdre. My name is Mukul Bakshi. Great to see people from all around the world here. I am the Chief Global Affairs Officer at CGFNS International in Philadelphia. I've been here for 10 years, and one other hat I wear in my role here at CGFNS is as the Director of the Alliance for Ethical International Recruitment Practices, which is our division that ensures that foreign health professionals are treated fairly when they come to the U.S. And AMN International has been a long-standing kind of pioneer and supporter of efforts to ensure that people who are using recruiters have the best experience they can.
Absolutely. And we take that very, very seriously here at AMN International. I know that we have many clinicians that are listening in today that are already part of our AMN International family. So that will be very, very familiar to you. All right, let's get into the questions. I want to be respectful of Mukul's time today. But Mukul, can you give a brief overview? Many of our clinicians already know, but for those who may not, of how CGFNS assists international nurses.
Absolutely. So when nurses are coming from abroad to the United States, often you have to come through CGFNS for two distinct processes. One is for our visa screen certificate. So if you're seeking an occupational or employment-based visa to come to the US, you need a visa screen that you can bring to the embassy for your consular interview. That's for the immigration side. Also, many state boards of nursing require what's called our CES, or Credential Evaluation Service report, for state licensure. And that report goes to the state and helps them determine whether you, as a nurse educated in your home country, are comparable to that of a domestically educated nurse. So there's two processes in which you'll often interact with us.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mukul. So I know that that helps a lot of people who are listening in today. So let's talk about the topic of the day. We are going to talk about the changes that are upcoming with the PTE English Competency Exam. So what will the new score requirements be for PTE effective December 1st of this year?
Great. So we're only making one minor change, right? So we're not changing all the other scores. The one score we're changing is that right now you need to have an average of 55 across the PTE exam if you choose to take that exam, with no more a minimum of 50 on every section. We're now saying that you have to have a 63 specifically for the speaking section. And this is, just as a note, only for the visa screen program. State boards of nursing set their own English language requirements that we would continue to adhere to based on what they have for that program.
Perfect. Thank you, Mukul. We've got some questions coming in here in the chat. So Zoomer is asking, does California Board of Nursing accept CES to get an RN license endorsement?
Generally, yes. I mean, I would have to look specifically at the requirements. California, unlike a lot of other states, has very specific requirements, but in some cases they would.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. And a lot of the questions that we get as well are very case specific to the individual. So what I would advise you to do is also reach out to your case specialist, reach out to your immigration coordinator, your license coordinator for any specific questions that you have regarding your particular case. A lot of the information that we provide on these shows is general to help the overall audience. So if there is something that is specific to your case, we would be happy to help you on an individual basis. So Mukul, can you talk to us a little bit about why the scores were updated, why the scores were increased in that one particular place that you just talked about?
Absolutely. So about, for 15 years of the visa screen program, there were only 3 exams that were accepted, the IELTS, TOEFL, and TOEIC exams. And I know there was a lot of pressure over the last few years for there to be more choice for international healthcare workers when they're taking exams. And so that was what happened 2 years ago is HRSA, which is the Health Resources and Service Administration within the Department of Health and Human Services in the US. They're the ones responsible for the visa screen requirements, and they added all these additional scores. And it came pretty quickly that the scores are not concordant, meaning that some tests were easier than others. And so we've been requesting for a while that HRSA kind of takes a new look at all the scores. This is not just one, but this was one that we found was a pretty big problem in that some nurses were not proficient in English when they got to their hospitals and healthcare facilities. And so Pearson and CGFNS, we worked together on this recommendation to HRSA, and then ultimately decided to unilaterally make this decision in the meanwhile. Just as another note, though, HRSA, since we've even had this invitation, has put out a call and is looking to review all the scores and make some additional changes as well.
Okay, great. And that's the most important thing, working with an organization like both of our organizations, the number one thing is, first of all, yes, we want to make sure that everyone is treated ethically and fairly, but also that when you come to the US, you're thriving, right? So that English competency exam is so important. And we hear as well routinely is that international healthcare workers, they pass NCLEX. That's not the most challenging thing in a lot of cases. It's that English competency. And that's why it is so important, particularly in the healthcare field. So you mentioned that you're working with HRSA on possibly updating the other English scores. Do you have a time frame around when that may happen, when you start conversations around that process for the other English competency exams?
So the conversations have been ongoing for quite a
Mhm.
while. HRSA just recently put a kind of a formal request for comments, and then they're going to get comments from all stakeholders like CGFNS and some of the English language providers, for example, on December 9th. So I'd expect sometime probably mid 2025 or later in 2025 that there would be some additional changes
Okay.
announced.
Perfect, thank you. And I'm sure that Mukul will keep us all
Right.
updated on anything that is happening that may change something with the other English competency exams. So Mukul, if we have some clinicians who had taken PTE prior to December 1st and did not reach the benchmark of the new score, how does that affect them? Is their old score grandfathered in, or will they have to take another English competency exam to qualify?
Yeah, great question. I know this is one that's on the kind of a big concern for a lot of healthcare workers. The way we're doing it is it's based on when you apply for your CGFNS visa screen. So specifically, when you have an order, which means you've had a paid order. So if you put in an order before December 1st, you are subject to the current requirement, that 50 for speaking. If you don't put in the order till after December 1st, even if you took the PTE in 2024 or 2023, you would be subject to the new scoring requirements. So I would suggest that if people are concerned about that, even if they don't have all the other documents, if they get their order in by December 1st, they're subject to the current standard.
Okay, great. That's very helpful. Have a lot of questions around that, so hopefully that helps you all. And you probably answered this question, but it's coming in. So for those who are already in the visa screen process, how do the new scores affect them if they do?
Yeah, so if you're already in the visa screen process, if you've received your certificate, of course, then your certificate's yours. We're not changing that. Even if you're in the process and haven't received your certificate yet, you'll be subject to the old requirements. We want to make sure there was ample notice, and that's why up till the end of this month, any new orders that are received or any orders that have already been received will be subject to the old standard.
Mhm.
This change is important, but we want to make sure it's as fair as possible in our rollout.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we know that PTE, as well as other English competency exams, are not accepted in every state across the country. And I know this changes routinely and will probably continue to evolve and change. But do we know how many states actually accept PTE right now, and how many don't? So again, this is going to change, as you know, it's very fluid. We
Yeah.
understand that it's very fluid, but I think that what the questions that are coming in is IELTS is certainly more accepted across the United States than PTE or other English competency exams. Would that be a valid statement, Mukul?
Yes, I think that's right. So IELTS is accepted pretty much everywhere throughout the country.
Mhm.
Um, I'd say PT is probably in, I don't know the exact number, but roughly about half the states at this point accept PTE. That number will continue to increase. Exams like PTE and OET that have entered, this market at the federal level 2 years ago are going state by state, trying to get more states to accept them. But
Okay.
it's really important that you don't think about just your visa screen and taking the test for that, but you make sure that you have the English language you need for whatever states you're considering working in.
Absolutely. And that's very important as you are going through the process. If you are already in the process, or you're thinking about starting the process, is really think about where you want to be, where you want to work. Maybe you've got friends and family in a certain location that you want to work in. Always work with your recruiter, with your licensure specialist on whatever English competency exam that you have taken or are planning to take, that it is accepted in the state where you want to live and work. Because, just like we said, the English process can be challenging. And so, if you've taken a particular exam, let's say PTE, and you want to go to a state that does not accept PTE, then you will have to take another English competency exam. Mukul has already mentioned IELTS is more widely accepted. So if you're thinking of placement opportunities and how you can increase your placement opportunities, then certainly think about taking an English competency exam that is more widely accepted across the United States, because it opens up many more opportunities for you. Thank you, Agus Kobe, for tuning in. Thank you for always bringing us the updates on the immigration system, of course. That is what this show is for, so that you are the first to hear what's happening. So Anessa is asking, Mukul, what is PTE? So thank you for asking that question, because we may be sitting here talking about it and saying like, well, everyone knows what it is, when you may not. So thank you for asking that question, Anessa, and I will give that over to Mukul.
Yeah, great question. Sometimes we just jump into the meat of it.
We know what it is. We just think. So thank you for holding us accountable to that.
Absolutely. So let me just step back for a moment. So there, when you apply for that visa screen, we're looking at kind of three things. We're looking at your credentials, like your licenses and transcripts. We're looking for a test for nurses, a test of nursing knowledge, like the CGFNS qualifying exam or the NCLEX exam. And then we're looking for English language. And that English language requirement can be satisfied in a couple ways. In some cases, you might be from a country that's exempt. There are a few countries that you don't even need that requirement. But for most countries, you need to take a test of English language. And we mentioned IELTS, and TOEFL. Those are two tests that are quite well known and widely accepted. And then these additional entrants over the last couple of years. Those include PTE, which is the Pearson test of English, the OET, which is the occupational English test, Michigan English test, Cambridge. So there are a few options provided by different vendors to meet the English language requirement.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So hope that answers your question, Anessa. And I'm sure many other people had that question on. So thank you for being brave and asking that. So again, going back to, Mukul mentioned there are many options for English competency, but please just make sure that you are working with the organization that you are working with, it'd be your recruiter, your licensure, your credentialing, that you are focused on taking that exam where you want to be placed, or considering an exam that just is more widely accepted, increasing your placement opportunities. So Anne has a question. I think Mukul had answered this one, but we will ask it again, as I'm sure that we've got people who are coming in a little bit later and not getting all the information. So Anne took her PTE in March of 24, but has not started her visa screen, in June of 2024, but yet to do her visa screen. Will she be affected by this new update?
Yeah. So, and my advice is, well, first check your score. Only a small percentage of people have between a 50 and a 62 in speaking, meaning they're going to be affected by this change. Most people who pass the exam are going to meet the new requirement as well. So I wouldn't worry about it if you're not in that range where your speaking score is in the 50 to 62 range. So first, check your score. Secondly, if you are in that range, you will be affected unless you get in your visa screen application by November 30th. So you don't have to have all your documents there, but you have to have a paid order. So if you're in that middle ground where you would pass under the old standard but won't pass under the new standard, I would suggest that you make sure you get your payment in by November 30th. And then even if it takes a few months to get your documents or to get the visa screen certificate issued, you'll be subject to the old standard.
Great. Thank you so much, Mukul. Hope that helps, Anne. And we have a lot of questions coming. I do just want to let everybody know that we do have team members on the back end as well, answering all the questions that you are putting in. So if we don't get to them live today, you will get your answer as our team is going through those questions as well today. So I don't have a name, but it says, hi, Deirdre, can you ask Mukul if the test scores are only acceptable in one sitting, or can we get the accepted scores in 2 sittings?
Yeah. So this is a good question. So, our formal policy at CGFNS is we don't allow what's called a clubbing or pairing of scores. So it's supposed to be in a single administration, but there are exceptions. So as a policy matter, it has to be the same test, but we do make exceptions so you can request those, and then there'll be a case-by-case waiver of that requirement. But again, that's at our discretion. As a general matter, it wants to be on one test. And we do now accept, I know some tests have retest provisions where you can take a certain section again, particularly for MET and I believe IELTS, where we do accept those changes. We realize that there's a kind of a lot of differences between the tests and we're trying to harmonize them. So we're actually going to have all the English language providers come to CGFNS offices here in Philadelphia and kind of talk about all these issues. And we want to have more formalized and standardized policies across in the next year.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mukul. We have got lots of questions coming in. I'll take a couple more, and then I will give Mukul back his day. So Mags is asking, if the visa screen is near expiry, do we have to take the English test again?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, for those of you who don't know, a visa screen certificate lasts about 5 years. So it's 5 years from when it's issued. So if you need to get another one due to your visa status or something else, then you would have to retake English because most English language scores are only valid for 2 years. So the way you would do that is you would either have to take another test, or in some cases, if you're already working in the United States, you may be exempt based on your employment history in the U.S. But if you're not here and you need to take a new visa screen, you would be subject to having to take another test again.
Okay.
And I just want to have one more question. I see in there, people asking about state requirements. I want to be clear that this change that CGFNS is doing effective December 1st is only for our visa screen program for immigration. As I mentioned earlier, we also do the CES reports for state licensure. In those cases, we will take whatever tests and whatever passing scores that the State Board of Nursing determines are appropriate. We don't have scores that are standard for those.
Okay, thank you, Mukul. Thank you so much. And again, our team is on the back end answering any questions that you have that we don't get to today. So Joseph is asking, I did IELTS and I have a visa screen already. I'm going to North Carolina. Do I kindly clarify whether I need it again? And I think you're asking whether you need to take IELTS again, Joseph.
Yeah. So Joseph, I mean, I think in general, probably not, right? I don't know the specifics of your case and when you took the test and what North Carolina requires. But if you have an active test like IELTS that's within the last couple of years and you have your visa screen, generally you would not need to take a test again.
Okay, thank you so much. So Mukul, before we let you go, any words of advice for our international healthcare workers who are listening in today?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I love talking to international healthcare workers, and it's just exciting to talk to people who are like on these amazing journeys to go to new destinations, new countries, and build new careers for themselves and their families. I would recommend if you choose to work with a recruiter, you really work with the reputable ones. I mean, this is an industry where there's a lot of differences, and organizations like AMN really provide the support throughout this process. As you can tell, even today, there's a lot of nuance, there's a lot of questions, and having qualified, strong support to help navigate you through that process can be incredibly valuable, not just in terms of your initial transition, but also in getting a foundation in your employment that's really valuable for your long-term success.
Thank you so much, Mukul. We really appreciate your time. And I know that you've helped a lot of people here today by answering all those questions. And we truly love partnering with CGFNS here at AMN International. And thank you for all you do to ensure that our international healthcare workers, once they arrive to the US, thrive, are treated equitably and fairly. As you all know, AMN International is a longtime subscriber to the Alliance, and we take it very, very seriously. And really, really thank you for your time today, Mukul. Have a wonderful weekend. And if we don't talk before that, have happy holidays. And until next time. So we'd love to have you back on the show.
Great. Thank you so much, Deirdre. And thank you, everyone, for joining today.
Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Well, I hope that that was very helpful for everybody. And again, I know that there are a number of questions that are coming in. I can see that Amanda is online answering all of those questions. A lot of them are going to be case specific to you. So give her as much information as you can so that we can make sure that we get you the correct information. So now we are going to jump right in to our regularly scheduled monthly immigration Q&A to get the latest and the greatest on the most recent visa bulletin. So if we can bring in Mike and Chris, we can get started. Hello.
Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Nice to see you again. How is everything going?
It's wonderful here in Cincinnati. Here in the northern part of Cincinnati.
Is it getting cold? I'm sure it is.
It's a little chilly.
It's a little chilly. Yeah. Well, I can't really say much. It was in the 60s this morning, and I have my turtleneck on already. So it's yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much for joining us today. Again, always such a pleasure to have you on the show. So we know that the visa bulletin came out a couple of days ago, and no movement. So Chris, was that what you were expecting?
Unfortunately, that's not surprising. I think, what we've been seeing over the recent past is that the State Department is tending to move the visa bulletin in quarterly jumps, which is, I know, frustrating for everybody. That's the bad news. The good news is I do expect that we'll see some movement with the January visa bulletin.
So you're getting a lot of great comments in here. Zoomer says that best lawyer team. Nice to see you. And then we have Agus Gobe is saying my heart skips a beat anytime I see these two, wondering if they're bringing good news or bad news. So lots of great comments for you two in the comments today. So Mike, we have a question. Why are the dates not moving forward when there were visas released in October?
Well, I think the main reason is that from a processing perspective, since there's a limited number of visas released each October, they want to kind of spread those out over the course of the fiscal year. Now, as we all know, they generally use all of them up in the first 3 quarters of the fiscal year, which is why we see summer retrogression. But we should not be surprised that there was not movement right after the establishment of the new dates. As Chris said, a couple of years, I believe, they started talking about doing quarterly movement to make it easier for them to manage. And then I think you have to keep in mind that there are a lot of people who had already gone to interviews last summer. They may have had medical delays. They may have had 221G, new verification of employment, a variety of things that then became current in October and need to be processed. So I think part of this is just to create kind of an orderly flow and manage workflow at the consulates.
Thank you so much, Mike. So Chris, RK is asking, is it expected that the bulletin will move in January? Do you see it getting to February 1? This was the filing date last year, or at least January 2023.
So the current date, just so everybody knows, is November 15 for the Philippines and for all other. I guess I'd probably be a little surprised if it moved all the way into February of 2023, but not entirely surprised. In terms of getting any more precise than that, I think if I were to tell you any date, or for that matter, anyone on the internet were to tell you any date, they're just taking a wild guess. So I don't know how forward it's going to move, but I would expect a little bit of movement next month.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. And, we always get a lot of questions on the show that are pertaining to your particular case. So what I would advise you to do is connect with your case specialist, connect with your immigration coordinator, and they can give you the latest and the greatest for your particular case. This show is, we try to give as much general information as we can that will help the broader audience. So if there are any case-specific questions that you have, the team would be more than happy to address those with you, okay? So Solomon, currently, how much time for the I-140? I think he's asking about I-140 processing times. So currently, what is the processing time for an I-140?
I think it's my turn, sadly. So first of all, with retrogression, almost no one is doing premium processing on I-140s. What used to be a common practice 2 years ago, today has no legal advantage whatsoever, because you get your priority date when your case is filed, not when your case is approved. So since retrogression is taking longer than the I-140 processing time, there is very little to no legal reason to do premium. With that said, normal processing is a little inconsistent based upon where the case is actually at. Companies do not have a choice of where to file a case. You file a case based upon a list the Department of the USCIS has put out as to if the job is here, you file here. If the job's here, you file a different place. Once the case is filed, though, cases get moved around to a lot of different processing centers. Some go to the different local USCIS offices even. They're trying to balance workload out. So as a result of that, we get inconsistent processing. So long preface, but back to the answer. We're seeing cases as quickly as about 8 months under regular processing, and we've got some cases that are at the 14, 15-month mark. So big range is at least what our office is seeing.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So Joylene is asking, and this will be for Chris, when do you think NVC will start dealing with 2024 I-140 approved cases?
NVC, first of all, to some degree, you're pretty premature. I mean, the reality is the Visa Bulletin Table A or Chart A shows November of 2022. So if you are, for argument's sake, in January even of 2024, you are still over a year out from your visa appointment. And of course, these don't necessarily move month by month. So that's the first thing. The second thing, however, is we can provide maybe a little more insight into this, which is if you look on the Visa Bulletin's webpage, you will see that there is 4 tables actually, 2 of which are the family-based tables, and so we'll just ignore those for the time being. But there are 2 employment-based tables. Table A is the final action table, and that's the one we've been talking about this morning. For that one, the EB3 for Philippines and all other is November 15th. There is a second table, though, Table B, which is the dates of filing table, and that shows for all other in the Philippines of March 1st, 2023. That is generally thought to be what the end date is going to be next summer. So what the U.S. government is signaling to us is that they actually think that this fiscal year we're only going to move from November 2022 to March of 2023. That's the bad news. And so by that analysis alone, I don't think that your case is going to be current for an interview probably until the following fiscal year, because you're in 2024. I will also tell you, though, the U.S. government always seems to get this wrong. They always seem to overshoot or undershoot that date. And so while this is a guideline and it's probably based on the best information they have, my sense is that is probably a conservative processing date. So that gives you a little insight as to when yours might come down the pike.
Thank you, Chris. So I hope that helps. Mike, we've gotten a couple of questions on if clinicians are in the EB3 process right now and during retrogression, is there a possibility to explore H-1B opportunities simultaneously?
First of all, there's nothing inconsistent with an H-1B filing and an EB3 filing. So in other words, one does not prohibit the other. However, keep in mind that the vast majority of RN positions in the U.S. do not qualify for an H-1B. In order to get an H-1B, we have to document that not only you have a BSN, which that part's probably easy, but the hard part is we have to document that the hospital or the unit you're going to work in basically only hires BSNs. And that is generally not true in the US. There are some variations of that, some exceptions to that with certain hospitals and certain units, but it is not very common. So nothing inconsistent, but very limited options. I will also say that with the new administration, that is something that is likely to be curtailed even further than it is now, and may frankly simply become an impossibility.
Thank you for that, Mike. Got that question a couple of times, so I wanted to make sure that we got that answered. We had some pre-submitted questions, Chris, and this came up a couple of times as well, is if we have green card holders who are listening in today, but they've spent 4 years outside of the country. There was a couple of examples. One was 4 years, one was 7 years. Can they re-enter the US on that green card?
Generally, no. The general rule of thumb is if you've been outside the United States, even though you're a U.S. permanent resident for more than 1 year, you probably, although not certainly, have abandoned your permanent residency. I'm using very precise language here, which is the words probably and perhaps. And so I would like you in those instances to contact an attorney to see what your options are and why it might still be worth you attempting to enter the United States. There's actually a number of criteria that go into that assessment as to whether or not you still are a legal permanent resident. Although, again, the primary one is just physically where you have been over the last period of time. At 4 years or 7 years, it would seem to me almost certainly under almost any determination that you have abandoned your permanent residency. But again, if you want a professional opinion, it may be worthwhile you trying to reach out to an attorney. Although candidly, at 4 to 7 years, the odds are pretty low that something would work out for you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Chris. And Mike, we had a question. We have a listener who has a family petition that is still pending. Has relocated to Canada and has gotten a position in the US on a TN. Will the family petition affect the TN, and what should they do at the border?
Yeah, a couple things. First of all, a TN is what's referred to as a non-immigrant visa. You're intending to come here, work, do whatever your business is, and then return back to Canada. A green card filing, a family petition, or an employment-based petition is obviously an immigrant petition. So you have two different intents. However, the TN at the border, they recognize that when a priority date for a family-based or an employment-based petition is not current and not close to be current, as often is the case in the family situation, that you can have both a non-immigrant intent today. I'm intending to only come in and work on this job, and then when my TN's up, leave. And a immigrant intent later when I'm then eligible. So in your situation, it will depend upon what category you are in the family-based. Family-based petition that way, I would say you will not get a TN granted to you. But anything where you have a retrogression wait, you probably will. But you do need to disclose it at the border. Do not try to think they don't know, or that maybe you'll slip through. You need to make sure that there's usually a question on the form about that. So make sure you disclose that.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mike. And again, we're getting a lot of questions on individual cases, and what I will tell you, so that you get the most accurate information on your particular case, please reach out to your case specialist or your immigration coordinator. They will have the most up-to-date information for you, and make sure that you get that correct. So that's really important. A lot of the information that we share here will be more general in nature to help the broader audience. So please make sure that you're reaching out to your individual contacts at AMN International, and they will make sure that they get you the correct information. Okay. I want to leave with lots of comments in the chat right now about disappointing, no movement with the visa bulletin, although expected, still disappointing for many of our listeners in. So Chris, and then I'll go over to Mike. What parting words of advice would you give everybody listening in on keeping in the process, keeping motivated? What would you recommend they do?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is just good advice for anybody, which is, and we do say this from time to time, so I apologize for those of you who listen in regularly. The visa retrogression is the visa retrogression. It's not going to change. In fact, it's not even going to change with the new administration coming in. There are still 140,000 employment-based visas that will be issued each year and every year. Those visas will still be allocated through a fairly confusing and convoluted system that breaks it down into EB 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and breaks it down into all these per country quotas. And we do see a 2-year retrogression that unfortunately is probably expected to grow. All that you can't control. The part that you can control is to make sure that you get your NCLEX passed, to make sure you get your English fluency passed, to make sure that you get your visa screen or healthcare worker certificate going. And perhaps most importantly, that you align with a very good U.S. hospital system or a U.S. recruiter such as AMN, who have long been in this space and have been doing this for 30 years. I'll bet AMN's been working with international nurses, and so those are the things you can control. As someone who's been in this area since the late 1990s, I can tell you, while it's frustrating, 2 or 3 years is actually historically very normal, very common, and I think you'll be a little bit surprised how quick you go through. But you can't go through the process until you get a priority date. So I would say control the things you can control, and the rest of it is beyond your control. So don't spend too much time sweating over it.
Perfect. Thank you, Chris. And we do have a few more questions that are coming in. So I'll leave Mike's words of advice and wisdom for another few minutes. But Mike, if you could take this question. Maki is asking, is it possible for filing dates to move forward within a fiscal year? And 2, is it possible for final action dates to move beyond the filing date?
Well, if the final, first of all, it is possible for date for filing dates to move forward during a fiscal year. As Chris mentioned, the U.S. government has a long and very consistent history of not getting that correct for a variety of reasons. Since this is recorded, we will not say incompetency is one of them, but that might be one of them. So yes, you can. That is certainly possible. Historically, the final action date does not move forward past the date for filing chart. So you would not expect the date for filing chart is designed to be a precursor, because that creates action where you can file a 485 if you're here in the U.S. It creates action where the NVC can move forward with your case, et cetera. And all of those tend to occur before the final action date chart. But yes, things could move in the fiscal year.
Perfect. Thank you, Mike. And Chris, I think people are joining a little bit late. So there's a question here, and I think what they're asking is, so Everlyn filed her I-140 in January, but it's now November and has not had any communication. Is that typical, or should she be concerned?
Well, I don't know what, that's unfortunate. It looks like you filed your I-140 in January, and now it's 11 months. I don't know when she says no communication, if she means from her law firm or from her recruiter. Yeah. So the first thing I would do is I would contact the law firm or the recruiter. That's the first place you should go to for asking questions about your case, right? Each case is always a little bit different. The 6 to 8 months, that's probably not unusual. That, even though it didn't appear like anything happened in your case, before an I-140 EB3 RN case can be filed, the employer needs something called a prevailing wage determination. And that is actually filed with the Department of Labor, and that does take 6 to 8 months. So that's not unusual to me. So for an organization or an employer that was new to this space or hadn't actively had any RN green cards in process, a 6 to 8-month sort of pre-processing that appears from your side to not be any work is actually work is going on. In terms of specifically 11 months with no communication, we have seen the USCIS take an extraordinary amount of time with these I-140s. And so again, I would just simply check with your employer and check with your law firm. My guess is that's actually probably not that unusual, but I still don't think sending an email out to those folks is a bad idea.
Okay. Thank you. Follow-up question for Mike. We had Mukul on the show earlier, and we were talking about PTE, and not just assuming that everybody knew what that was, and there was a few listeners that didn't. So just for clarification, what is a final action date, Mike?
So the final action date is what people refer to as Chart A of the visa bulletin, and that means that you are now at the front of the line, and a visa or a green card, immigrant visas and green cards are interchangeable terms, can be issued to you. So your case is eligible for adjudication. So if you're in the U.S. and you have a 485 filed, that means that a green card could be issued. In some offices, that means a personal interview could be scheduled. They will not schedule them until there's a current priority date. Other offices in the U.S. will do interviews before. But if you're in the U.S., it means you can get action. If you're overseas and you are DQ'd, you are then eligible for an interview. And when you go to that interview, you are eligible to have your green card issued. So final action date means you are at the end of the road as far as waiting for retrogression.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mike. Chris, Patricia is asking, can you kindly let us know why perm approvals are taking more than 15 months at the Department of Labor?
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason for it other than the U.S. government does seem to take a lot of time with those perm approvals. I don't actually know if that date, I just don't have the perm processing dates in front of me right now, but let's presume that's accurate. I don't know. That's also not unusual. And to some degree, it also doesn't really matter on some level because assuming you're EB3, when you file your perm, and these, by the way, are for non-nurses and non-physical therapists. When you file your perm, your priority date is established. And so whether it takes a month or 15 months, once you get that perm approval, and then you file your I-140 will actually be backdated to the date of the filing of your perm. So you're not losing your place in the queue. But again, I don't know off the top of my head what the perm processing dates are in the flag system right now.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Zoomer is saying final action date is the best date. So thanks for that, Zoomer. Appreciate you joining today. So lots and lots. Thank you, Tabitha, watching from Riyadh. So Mike, I want to go back to you and any words of advice for our listeners today?
Well, I would say that, first of all, I'd echo everything Chris said. Control what you can control. Take the actions you can take. I also think it's impossible advice and no one will adhere to it. But I would say don't look and concern yourself too much with the bulletin on a every month basis because it has historically not done movement till quarterly. But I agree, everyone's going to look, I'm going to look, and we're all going to be either really happy or really sad as soon as we see it. So I get it. But we have to focus on the big picture long term. Retrogression is simply the norm. That's been the norm. Other than a few short periods of time in our history, if we look back over the last 25, 30 years that Chris and I have been doing this work, and I'm throwing him in with me as well because clearly we're about the same age. We're within the same 2 decades. Is that this is norm, and this has nothing with you or your employer that's sponsoring you or your agency that you're with. It's simply the U.S. government and the way their process works, and it's not a impediment to you getting to the U.S. It simply controls the amount of time. So view this as I'm still going to reach my goal. I'm still going to accomplish what I want to accomplish. It's simply going to take me longer to actually do that. So that's my thoughts.
Thank you so much. And just as I said, we've got people cycling in and out for the entire show, but I know that we asked this at the top of the show, but we'll ask it again before we close out. Frederick is asking, we don't have crystal ball, so we can't predict the movement of the January 2025 visa bulletin, but where do we think it will go? Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would move, into December maybe, but again, this is just a wild guess.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Again, we wish that we had crystal balls and could predict it, but just to what Mike said is, every month it comes out and we're happy or we're sad. But again, this is not uncommon. This is just how the system works. And while it may take you a little bit longer, you will get here. We need you here. We want you here. And so just keep on driving the course and controlling what you can control. So I appreciate both of your time. Thank you so much. Again, a lot of the information we share routinely each month on the Immigration Show, particularly if we don't see movement in the visa bulletin. Hopefully next time when we get together, we'll have some positive movement to share. And at that point, we'll be able to answer a lot more questions. Everlyn, you did just respond back to the question that we had asked Chris, and it was your agency who filed your I-140. So please reach out to, if it is AMN International, reach out to your immigration coordinator. If it is another organization, then please reach out to that organization to get your answer. Okay, so thank you for following up. Okay, well, Chris and Mike, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. If we don't get the opportunity to do another show before the holidays, I want to wish you both happy holidays. Thank you for jumping on every month and really giving all of the great information that you do to our listeners. I know that this is their favorite show where they get a lot of great information from you. And you got a lot of great comments in the chat today. So famous, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And
good
until next time, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, so lots of great information today. And I know that from looking at the comments, a lot of disappointment. Why didn't it move? There were visas released in October, but you heard it from our experts, right? So this is normal. And what I would encourage you to do is take the advice of the attorneys, take the advice of Mukul. And the thing that you can control is getting your application in today, right? So if you have not already, apply today, get your place in line. We have many, many opportunities. Our handle is up there again, amnhealthcare.com/international. So if you have not already, please take that step. That is what you can control. And I guarantee you, you will not regret it. It may take you a little bit longer, but you've got AMN International holding your hand throughout the entire process. Right now, we've got great staffing opportunities available. If you want your I-140 filed quickly in the next 30 days, depending on how long depending on when you can get your documents into us that are required to file that I-140, you can get it filed immediately. And that is what's going to establish that all important priority date. So you can wait another month and wait to see what happens with the next visa bulletin, or you can take action today. And that is what I would advise you to do. We say it each and every time that we are together on these shows, we say that. So there are many things in this process that are outside of your control, but this one is absolutely 100% inside your control. So I would encourage you to do so. You heard it from Chris, you heard it from Mike, you heard it from Mukul, and now you're hearing it from me again. So, but we want to talk about upcoming shows. Also want to do a plug for our photo contest. So we have got on November 22nd, we've got a very exciting client showcase. So more details to come on that. You will want to make sure that you are tuning in. We also have the Lafora Talk Show on November 19th. And then we have a new podcast, Nursing in America. But we want to hear from you, right? We say this every time that we are together, but we want to hear from you. What do you want to hear about? What is important to you? So please make sure that you can pop it in the chat here. You can send us an email directly, whatever is easiest for you. But we want these shows to be valuable, to give you the information that you need to either take the next step in your journey or start your journey. So please make sure that you are getting that over to us, and we would be happy to put a show on topics that are important to you. I know we love the immigration show, having Mukul on discussing the changes with PTE. That's all very, very great information to have. But what else do you want to hear about? Remember, we are the experts. We've been doing this for over 40 years. So any topic that you want to learn more about, please let us know, and we'd be happy to facilitate that. So let's go to our AMN Academy, our upcoming shows. So as always, we have got our NCLEX class on the first Monday, and then we have our Aspire class on the third Monday, and then we have both of our English classes on the second and the fourth Mondays. So I know that a lot of you that are listening in today routinely tune in to those AMN Academy shows. They are every Monday at 5 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So please make sure that you are continuing to tune into those. And here we are, I almost forgot, our American Autumn Photo Contest. We will have our winners announced on November 22nd. So if you have not, then please go on our social pages, our Facebook and our Instagram, to see just examples of the amazing photographs that we have received from our nurses, really highlighting American autumn, what we call fall. So lovely, lovely pictures. So please make sure that if you have not already, go in and take a look at them. But the winners will be announced on November 22nd. So we'll be excited to announce those to you. All right, so we had a lot of information today, a lot of great guests. I would like to thank them again for joining us today. Any questions that we did not get to, again, our team is in the background and they will make sure that they get those answered for you. So until the next time, then what I would say to you is dream big, dream smart, choose AMN International. And until the next time, onwards and upwards.